So which character should I take an in-depth look at next? Well, I talked about Vincent last time, so we can throw him out. You know, I can't ignore this face any longer. I mean, just look at this face. Look at it. Look at that face. Oh, Red 13. What is it about him that just drives fans of the series crazy? You know, I really can't say, but he is widely regarded as freaking awesome and will live on in the hearts of Final Fantasy VII fans forever. And if nothing else, he's definitely one of the most unique characters of the franchise. I mean, before this, everyone was on two legs. Look at those idiots on two legs. I got two. This guy got four legs. Look at those legs, four of them. And who would have thought that his weapon of choice would be headdresses? But Red 13's uniqueness doesn't stop there. He actually has a really interesting and culturally inspired backstory. So, where do we start? Well, I guess to begin with, we have to ask the all-important and obvious question. What is Red 13? Funnily enough, the most important question we have is also the question we don't have an answer to. In short, Red 13 is some kind of species that doesn't exist in our world, but isn't given a distinct name in Final Fantasy's universe either. He kind of looks like a cross between a lion and a wolf, but with fiery red and orange fur and a brown mane. He has all sorts of beads, jewelry, and feathers attached to his body to coincide with the Native American theme given to his home, Cosmo Canyon. His tail in most artworks is actually on fire, proving that Pokemon copied off Oh. Well anyways, his name, Red 13, is given to him by Hojo as an experiment name. His real name given to him at birth was Nanaki, and yes, I did my research this time, it is pronounced Nanaki. That's how you pronounce it. Plus, I'm part Native American, so you should take my word for it. And speaking of pronunciations, for all of you who were scarred by the way I pronounced Eris in the last video, well, I'm sorry. I was obviously wrong and didn't do my research because Aries is the way I always said it as a kid, and I didn't figure anyone would mind. But boy was I wrong. But hey, I'd get mad too if somebody pronounced my favorite character wrong. Like if someone called Yuna, I don't know, Una? Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Let's not go any farther down that road and talk about how I pronounced Regen. Or Regen. Okay, seriously guys, I'm sorry. Character designer Tetsuya Nomura said that the name Nanaki was chosen to fit the Native American theme, but the name Red 13 was actually meant to not sound like a name at all. Probably to push the theme of Hojo not caring for his experiments, which if we learned anything from Vincent's past, is pretty obvious. Tetsuya thought that the best way to accomplish a name that doesn't sound like a name was to combine both a color and a number, hence Red 13 was chosen. We don't know what species Red 13 is, but we do know that he is one of the last of his kind. Red 13's species typically lives hundreds of years, making his age of 48 during the game reflect that of a teenager's age. Well, most sources say he's 48. The European game manual says he's 45. Sorry Europe, we're going with 48. Both because more sources say so, and because we like the number 48 around here. Official sources say that Red 13 is a feline, but the way he moves, the way he howls at the moon, and the way that he yelps as he hits the ground in Advent Children all suggest that he's actually a canine. Even the little girl in Costa del Sol calls him a dog, and we all know that's the most credible source we have right there. So that's kind of the physical rundown, but as for Red 13's personality, we don't really have much to go on, unfortunately. Red 13 is without a doubt the most underutilized character in Final Fantasy VII, having only one real quest involving his story, being in nature acquired an observant type rather than, well, Barret. And hell, he only has one line in the entire 2 hours and 6 minutes of Advent Children. One line.
There are still children with the stigma.
That's it. That's all we get. What we do know is he is a warrior, once again fitting with the Native American tribes his character was based on. He has courage, honor, and is extremely intelligent. He also holds a certain distaste for humans, probably due to Hojo's experiments on him, but seems to let these feelings go once he learns the truth about his father's death. He even has different dialogue for some events in the game depending on whether or not he has learned the truth about his father yet or not. The most obvious would be when Yuffie steals the party's gil. If Red 13 hasn't learned the truth yet, he will curse the human race by saying greed, a perfect example of the human nature. But if he has learned the truth, he will say, give back what is rightfully mine. Also, in the case of Nanaki, in the collection of short stories that take place after Final Fantasy VII called On the Way to a Smile, it is revealed that Red 13 is torn between being an animal and a human, mostly because he is smart like a human, but has a body of an animal. Nanaki was born in Cosmo Canyon in 1959 to a mother we don't know and another of his species named Seto. Later on that same year, Seto leaves the tribe, and Nanaki figures he fled because he was afraid of another tribe, the G tribe, who were planning on invading Cosmo Canyon. It turns out that Seto actually sacrificed himself to stop the invasion, a truth that isn't revealed to Nanaki until the party arrives at Cosmo Canyon and fights an ancient G spirit that gave every child playing the game freaking nightmares. His mother dies sometime after Seto leaves, and Nanaki is put in the care of Bugenhagen. This guy, whom Nanaki only refers to as Grandpa. So skip ahead 47 years to the year of... Wait, what? Okay, so in the world of Final Fantasy, when the calendar year passes 1999, instead of going to 2000, the entirety of the world decided to just reset it to 0. I guess that would be easier to keep track of until another 2,000 years go by. Hey, when did that big battle take place? Oh, that was in 1997. Now, you talking about the first 1997 or the second 1997? Anyways, so 47 years later in the year 6, the events of Before Crisis Final Fantasy VII take place. On October 10th, Nanaki takes place in a ritual that is held every 50 years by his tribe to appease the planet. However, Nanaki has second thoughts about joining because he doesn't truly consider himself a warrior. A lady version of his species, okay, so there's an Indian name pronounced Dinah. So is this just another spelling of Dinah? Or is it Denna? I don't know, I'll let you decide. Anyway, she is supposed to be his partner for the ritual, but instead calls him a coward. You know, I'm surprised Nanaki grows up to be such a confident warrior. I mean, he loses his parents when he's young, he grows up having girls make fun of him, and then later he gets experimented on by a crazy scientist. Poor Nanaki, man. Poor Nanaki. He does get a chance to prove himself though when the Turks come to capture a specimen for Hojo. Nanaki saves Dinah and proves himself a warrior of the canyon. And although he's ultimately defeated, he gets to complete the ritual before the Turks ship him off to Hojo's lab in Midgar. A year later, in 7, Cloud and the party finds Nanaki during the events of Final Fantasy VII. Hey, I see what they did there. So Cloud and the gang, which is really just Avalanche at this point, finds Nanaki in a glass container with Eris. What was Hojo doing with both of them in the same container, you may ask? Well, he was trying to interbreed them so he could have specimens that were either Cetra or Nanaki's species. Or both. So basically, if Cloud hadn't walked in, Nanaki and Eris were about to get down and get funky! Luckily, they get there in time and save them so that the game can keep its T for teen rating. I always thought the way Nanaki escapes was pretty cool. He pretends to attack Eris so Hojo will open the tank, and then attacks Hojo while the party grabs Eris. Nanaki then reveals the name given to him by Hojo, Red 13, which for some reason is the default name given to him, even though if I were captured by some scientist and given some name like Purple 85, I'd probably try to separate myself from that name as much as possible after I escaped. Either way, we can guess he came up with that name since Nanaki is, well, red, and he was given a number 13 tattoo. Now let's take a quick detour from the timeline and talk about this tattoo for a second. Anybody playing through the game will learn that Hojo gives numbered tattoos to all the subjects that he injects Drenova cells into, which becomes more relevant later in the game when the reunion brings them all together. The reunion is a scientific theory proposed by Hojo which states that when split apart, Drenova cells will seek to reunite, even going so far as influencing the minds of those infused with Genova cells. During the events that lead up to the reunion, Cloud can choose to give Red 13 the black materia, and if he does, Sephiroth tricks him into giving the materia back to Cloud by creating an illusion of Tifa. I always attributed this to the reunion theory, and even Red 13 believes that Hojo infused him with Genova cells. But in actuality, Red 13 was not part of the Genova experiments. Red 13 was captured by the Turks 3 years after the Genova experiments were performed, so the tattoo on his leg is from a different, unspecified experiment, and Red 13 doesn't actually have any Genova cells in his body. Red 13 doesn't give Cloud the black materia back because he is controlled, but simply tricked due to his self-confidence issues. Okay, so back to the timeline. Red 13 joins the gang and with them escapes Midgar. Then Red 13 becomes an extremely underutilized character until the party reaches his hometown, Cosmo Canyon. They meet Grandpa, and he reveals all of Red 13's secrets, like his age and his true name. Red 13 begins to badmouth his father, who he still believes fled when the G tribe attacked the canyon. So Grandpa decides to show the party the truth by sending them into the death pit of terror. Seriously though, creepy spiders and nightmare fuel just to show Red 13 something he could have told him anyways. The pit itself is infested with the souls of the G tribe, who were so angry that they didn't take over Cosmo Canyon that their souls still wander, unable to assimilate into the life stream. I always thought that was a cool concept, kind of like all the dead people in Final Fantasy X who can't join the far plane because they still have work to do. Or, you know, insert any zombie movie plot here. So Grandpa talks about how the G tribe were obviously going to win because they were so strong and had so many forces while the party fights fucking nightmare fuel. And then they reach the end of the cave where Grandpa reveals the ultimate warrior who saved the entire canyon, who turns out to be Seto, Red 13's father. Red 13's entire personality changes at that moment. Realizing his father's courage gives him the desire to become a great warrior just like him, and as mentioned before, a lot of his script changes after this point. He howls at the moon and Seto's stone body sheds tears. Huh. Haven't we seen this before? Grandpa tells Red 13 he should protect the planet any way he can, and so he joins the party in their quest to stop Sephiroth and Shinra. And from then on, he becomes a very underutilized character again, throwing in quotes from time to time, usually stating the obvious, but in a more warrior-esque way. Grandpa gets some more limelight though, but much later in the game when he helps the party realize that Aeris conjured Holy just before Sephiroth killed her, and Sephiroth is blocking it from inside the core of the planet. Then he falls ill, and before dying tells Red 13 to go out and see the entire planet and gain true knowledge from it. As I mentioned before, after the events of Final Fantasy VII, Red 13 is the main character in his own story, the case of Nanaki. In this story, Red 13 begins to be called Nanaki by everyone, probably because the days of Hojo and Sephiroth are over, but we're going to keep calling him Red 13 just for the sake of this video. He returns home to Cosmo Canyon, but shortly leaves due to Grandpa's advice to see the world. He then begins to develop a terrible void in his heart, which he gives the name Gilligan just so he can remember it. Gilligan is a collection of struggles Red 13 has, such as his struggles between being beast and human, and his realization that he will live on for an extremely long time and have to watch all of his friends perish before his eyes, with the exception of Vincent, who is immortal. Vincent uses this fact to comfort Red 13, and says that one day he may even have children who will also keep him from being lonely. The two agree to meet in Midgar once every year for the rest of Red 13's life. Red 13 also appears in the case of Yuffie, where he helps save Yuri and also helps to try to find a cure for Geostigma. He also mentions that he got a cell phone to stay in touch with the other party members, but he struggles using it. That means he got a cell phone before Vincent. Come on, Vincent, get with the times. Aren't you a cool hip vampire dude? And it sparkles. And with the sparkle. Then Red 13 appears in Advent Children, where he helps to fight Bahamut Sin and gets one line where he once again states the obvious. Then in terms of official Final Fantasy timeline, we don't see Red 13 again until the ending of Final Fantasy VII, which shows Midgar 500 years in the future. Red 13 is shown with two adorable cubs, implying that he either mated with Dinah or some other girl of his species. They come up to a cliff where a Midgar overcome with moss and trees is shown, which means a lot of different things actually. For one, Shinra hasn't made any kind of return in the past 500 years, or at least not in Midgar, and this could also mean that the human race in general is gone, since it could be theorized that if humans still existed, they probably would have used the huge area of Midgar for something else rather than just letting it rot. However, when the screen fades, the sound of children laughing can be heard. So that may imply that humans are still around. We can also theorize that Vincent is still alive, both because it seems like Red 13 is returning to their annual meeting in Midgar, and because, well, he's immortal, so it's probably safe to say he's still around. Red 13 is a very well-rounded character and can be used as either a physical attacker or magic caster. He also has the second best dexterity stat behind Yuffie. When joining the party, his level is the average party level +2. His weapons consist of hair clips, combs, and headdresses that usually increase his magic power. Red 13's weapons are also the only weapons that aren't rendered in battle. Another important thing to note is that after you complete the Nightmare Fuel Cave, Red 13 will receive the Seraph Comb, which has 68 attack power and blows every weapon in the game up to that point completely out of the water, and continues to be the best weapon in the game until the party travels to the Temple of the Ancients nearly 20 save points later. Red 13 is also the only short-range attacker to get a long-range weapon, the Hairpin. His ultimate weapon, the Limited Moon, deals damage based on how full his MP gauge is, up to 3 times his normal damage. Red 13's limit breaks are some of the coolest in the game and range from dealing damage to buffing teammates. Sledfang deals 3 times normal damage to one enemy. Lunatic High gives haste to the party and raises Red 13's defense percent, or his evasion, by 50% for every alive party member. Bloodfang deals 1 1/4 times normal damage and absorbs HP and MP. Stardust Ray deals 10 hits for 5/8 normal damage each. Howling Moon gives Red 13 haste, berserk, and raises his attack by 60%. Earth Rave attacks 5 times total, dealing double normal damage on every hit. His ultimate limit break, Cosmo Memory, deals 7 13/16 times his normal damage to all enemies, which easily hits for 9,999 even when Red 13 is on a low level, and is the second strongest single hit limit in the game, surpassed only by All Creation. During development, Red 13 was going to be a beast-type member of Soldier capable of using magic and speaking in human tongue. The tribe he is in was going to be named the Booma tribe after Bugenhag, Grandpa, but later this was changed into the unnamed tribe that Red 13 belongs to now, which still holds Grandpa's ideals of protecting the planet. There was also a subplot planned where Hojo created 2 clones of Red 13, Cobalt 14 and Indigo 15. The party would have to fight these clones, and then fight a battle with 2 more clones of Red 13 and Red 13 himself, and the party would have to figure out which were the clones and which was the real Red 13. Then Red 13 would have asked the party to spare Cobalt and Indigo, claiming that they were the last of his kind, which kind of would have destroyed the end cutscene, by the way. Cobalt and Indigo would later appear in the final dungeon with robot parts and try to take out the party again to prove they are stronger than the original Red 13. Red 13's theme, titled Red 13's Theme, sounds much like 2 other tracks, Cosmo Canyon, which plays in Cosmo Canyon, and The Great Warrior, which plays during the scene with Seto. Red 13's theme only plays once during the game, right after the HO512 battle. One final interesting thing to note is that Red 13's right eye is scarred, much like Auron's in Final Fantasy X. Come to think of it, Auron and Red 13 have a lot of similarities. Anyways, many people overlook this eye because in almost all FMVs, portraits, scenes in Advent Children, and even concept art, Red 13 is shown from his left side. The only official source to show Red 13 before his scar is in Before Crisis Final Fantasy VII, so it can be inferred that Red 13 either got the scar from the battle against the Turks at Cosmo Canyon, or sometime between getting captured by Hojo and when the party rescues him a year later. So that's it for our furry friend Red 13. Thanks again for all of your support, and make sure to check out our Patreon page if you want some exclusive stuff that won't be on YouTube. And hey, comment below and let me know which character I should take an in-depth look at next. Luckily, they save them both, and the game keeps its T for T rating. T for T? What is T for T?